right? Yeah, this is our PayPal from Todd. This is still from his first one. So I think these are the last two. I've got this one and a Ronnie Hawkins. I think that's the, and then it's Nothing But Rush. So yeah, but yeah, Robbie Robertson on, yeah, George Stroumboulopoulos. But he does actually do great interviews. This guy. We've watched a couple of, I think one of Rush, one of a couple of Neil. Anyway, yeah, but yeah, Robbie Robertson. Let's go.
Just listen to that. Perfectly captures the feel of a lost American South. And at the heart of that quintessential American sound, only one American and a handful of Canadians. The band, spearheaded by Robbie Robertson, a Toronto boy raised on Hank Williams and strumming guitar on the Six Nations Reserve where his mom was born and raised. And then with the Hawks backing up the great rompin' Ronnie Hawkins in some of the sketchiest places imaginable. The Hawks became the band. They played with Bob Dylan on his first Electric tour, got booed for their efforts. And when the band called it quits in '76, Martin Scorsese was there to capture the glory. Post-band, Robbie's had Highs, a solo record that went gold and took home some major Junos. Difficulties as well, a growing rift with his former bandmate, the late Levon Helm, a rift that wasn't mended until many years later. And now Robbie's taken some time to reflect on some of the musical greats who've influenced him. It's a new book and CD collection called Legends, Icons, and Rebels. Music that changed the world. Robbie Robertson, everybody.
He looks crazy different.
How are you?
Hello, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome to the show. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
What's happening, my friend?
Look at that.
Look at that, eh?
Yeah.
Legends, Icons, and Rebels. I like this book. Take a handful of these artists, the music that changed the world, as they say, give a few pages to each, talk about why they are relevant, what they meant. There's personal stuff from you as well for everybody. And then there's CDs with songs you can listen to at the end, which is amazing. It's a musical education. But my question is, when did you think, yeah, I'm going to do this? I think it's my job to kind of share that with people.
Kids should grow up knowing about the greatest recording artists of all time and music that is timeless, and to be able to build this taste factor and know about quality music. And so it's just a great thing just to have sitting there.
When you go through your story, the fact that you were there when Dylan went electric, you were there, that's something. But I just imagine that in those nights, you must have had some of the wildest nights a rock and roller could ever have in that decade.
Well, what we weren't aware of, when I hooked up with him, I didn't know that we were going to be traveling around the whole world. And every night that we set up and played, people were going to boo us and throw things. And I thought, what a strange way to make a buck, you know? You just go from town to town, they throw at you, and then you move on to the next, you pack up and you go to the next one, and they do the same thing. And it was, and so you say in those things, oh, it was before its time, or they give it some kind of story like that, but it was a part of a musical revolution that was going on that changed the course of music forever.
We had Ronnie Hawkins on the show.
That tour really as well shows you how near and dear to the heart of the world Dylan was when he was that folk singer, writing Blowing in the Wind. Like, all of that, it was just a reaction to him not being that guy anymore, basically. But it shows you, like, now Bob Dylan's almost kind of forgotten about by the majority. But yeah, in his day, he was a god, basically. People saw him like he was a messenger from God.
Talking about those days when you were in his band, and he talked about how you were always on it. And actually, Rompin' Ronnie has a question he wants to ask you.
Hey, Robbie, you handsome devil. These people want to know here, those suits that I had made for y'all, what did you all carry in them back there when you was a young, peace-loving kid? And what did you all do with them when you left me? I heard awful stories, Robbie. I hope they're not true.
We had Lou Miles, the tailor, who's still going here in Toronto.
They forced you to wear suits, right, Ronnie?
Well, we did. I mean, that was part of just what you had to wear in the places we played. But we had special little pockets made in these suits. And in those little pockets, we carried blackjacks because we played some rough joints, some very dangerous things that we were lucky that we got out alive. And it was just, and nobody said, whoa, wait a minute, we got to carry weapons to play this music?
You had a gun in your pocket.
Right, it was called, yeah, that comes with the gig. I visited with Ron a couple of nights ago when I came in, and we were talking about when we played Jack Ruby's club in Fort Worth, Texas. And
Jack Ruby.
the Jack Ruby in this place. And this place was, you could smell danger in the air in this thing. And this club had been caught on fire, and so many stories went down in this place, and it had half burnt down. And rather than tearing it down, he just took off the rest of the roof and called it the Skyline Lounge. Right?
That's so badass.
We had to stay there overnight in this club to guard our equipment, because they said we can't guarantee that somebody won't break into this place, it wasn't that secure, and steal your equipment. And one night, we heard this strange sound. Two of us, Rick Danko and me, were sitting there, we were playing cards, and we heard this weird scratching and this sound, and Rick picked up the gun and said, I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna shoot somebody if they come in here. And it was dogs, like police dogs, and they were scratching at the floor, and these cops were coming in. Rick was pointing a gun at them when they came around the corner.
That's not the place to point a gun at a cop, if any place.
And they said, boy, you boys are lucky we didn't let these dogs go, because they would have eat up your ass. I'll tell you right. And Rick said, no, they wouldn't.
What do you think when you think of all those guys? I mean, there's not many left, right, the band, you know, we've lost a few. So much was made of the fact that you guys weren't friends for the longest time, you know?
Well, we were never not friends. What happened after I wasn't with the band anymore, I did leave after the last waltz. And I knew it was time, it was survival time, and I had to go. And years later, after that, Levon became very bitter, and he was right in saying I walked away, but he went to a whole other place in this that was never true and everything, but it just kind of ate him up, and it became part of his personality. And
Did it hurt you?
He was my best friend in the world, and so it did hurt my feelings. But I knew what wasn't true, and so, you know.
And in the end, he did say, this is an interview clip, he said something about how you guys had sort of become friends again.
Well, I think that over the years,
The world. And so it did hurt my feelings. But I knew what wasn't true, and so, you know.
And in the end, he did say, this is an interview clip, he said something about how you guys had sort of become friends again.
well, I think that over the years, there's been enough water under the bridge that it's not an issue with either of us, certainly not with me, and I don't think with him either. Robbie's enjoyed good success with his solo career, and we've enjoyed some success of our own, so we haven't tried to turn the pages back.
I was on my way a couple of years ago to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and I was inducting some people. And on the way there, they told me that Levon was on his deathbed. And I was shocked because I thought that he'd overcome the throat cancer and that he was doing fine. He was doing his midnight rambles and everything. And I've only always wished the best for him. And then they told me this, and it just it killed me to hear this. And I did the induction ceremony and then flew directly to New York and went to the hospital, and I saw him, and I spent an hour holding his hand, before, and then just a day or a couple of days later, he passed on. But I was relieved that I was able to get there and just be there with him and everything. So some things you can't wash away,
Stick around, more with Robbie right after this.
But you yourself have never done any drugs in your life?
No, I wouldn't. I've just seen too many of my friends go here. Chocolate, Hendrix, you name it. Elvis Presley, some of the greats have gone down the train. And I'm feeling fine without it.
Robbie and Chuck. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, those guys, Jerry Lee Lewis, obviously Elvis, and maybe Carl Perkins as well. But what was it getting to know Chuck Berry and being able to work with Chuck Berry as a rock and roller? What was that like?
Well, this was when they were doing Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll.
Which is one of the craziest films you're ever going to see in the music business.
This footage that you were just looking at a little bit here, when we shot that, and Chuck and I had an incident.
What was the incident?
I was in on this project at the very beginning, and they wanted me to do things, but I was in the middle of making a record, and I couldn't do it, so I got Keith Richards to come into it, and I got Taylor Hackford to come into it.
It's amazing that, by the way, Keith Richards filled in for you. Right, if you think about it.
Yeah.
I was thought it was
So
Keith
anyway,
Richards'
after
idea.
they did that, Keith Richards told me that it was the worst nightmare of his life, trying to deal with this guy.
Yeah.
And it's his hero, too. Interesting.
Have you been disappointed by your heroes?
I mean, a lot of my heroes are crazy, but so's a lot of people. I don't know.
What a pleasure, man.
Thank you so much.
Legends, Icons, and Rebels, Music That Changed the World is the book. You got to pick it up. We'll be right back. We'll do a very quick promo here, and then we'll get it.
There's actually a lot of crazy. The Jack Ruby story, yeah. What's a blackjack then? Is that what cowboy women would have, like? Do you know what I mean? That little gun. I don't know what blackjack is. But yeah, there was a lot of kind of historical. But yeah, the How Rock and Roll. That's crazy that it was kind of his idea, because the way they put it across in How Rock and Roll, that it was Keith Richards' idea, and Keith Richards says he came up with the idea because every time you go and see Chuck Berry didn't tour with a band. He'd turn up, and whoever the supporting band was in that area, he'd use that band. He's like, and the trouble is he changes key whenever he wants. And of course the band doesn't know, so the band hasn't rehearsed with him. He's doing things that they couldn't possibly predict unless they read minds. So he said, so Chuck Berry's shows was always pretty shit. So Keith Richards says, it was his idea to put the band around him, but it weren't. It was Robbie Robertson's. But like he said, to be fair, yeah, because Keith Richards has a story before that of Chuck Berry, that Chuck Berry wasn't a nice man. Yeah, he really wasn't. But Keith Richards has a story that he saw him in an airport. He saw Chuck Berry obviously before they filmed that. He went up and tapped him on the shoulder, just kind of say hello, because it's like he said, it's his hero. And Keith Richards said, Chuck Berry just spun round, punched me straight in the face and put me on my ass. He's like, and I just kind of sat there. He's like, yeah. But watch that, because you do. Like, you see Keith Richards just get slowly but surely more and more annoyed at him. And the bit with, I think it's the Johnny Be Good opening, and Keith Richards is playing the opening, and Chuck Berry saying it don't go like that. It goes like this, like, and what he's saying is the double string, like the famous Chuck Berry double string thing. He's saying you've got to you start it bent, so you bend the strings down, then hit and bring it up, and that's what he's trying to tell Keith Richards. And he's going, no, do it again, no, do it again. And then in the end, he said, there, that's it, you got it. And then he turns around to side, starts singing, and you see Keith Richards like that, goes like that behind his back with his guitar. Yeah. But yeah, that was a great interview with him. I was thinking as well, the Jack Ruby story, you just wouldn't get away with that now. Do you know what I mean? The roof blowing off, and you just go, It just would not be allowed today. But yeah, that was a great interview. I might have to edit out the beginning though, the intro. See. But anyway, yeah. Yeah. That's the reaction. Sweet.